Now, for a long time, we've been told to forget backyards and get used to living in apartments. But as hundreds of residents remain locked out of their homes in defective Sydney buildings, the idea of high-rise living is certainly losing its appeal. But what do buyers need to know before they purchase an apartment? And do consumers really have more protection buying a toaster than a $1 million property? Wow. Real estate expert Ben Kingsley from the Property Couch podcast is with us. Nice to see you.
Hey, Sarah.
Is that right? You have more protection buying a toaster than a property?
Yes, so under consumer laws, we have more protection in buying small appliance items than what we do in buying a house or an apartment.
That's so wrong, isn't it? So, go on.
Well, I was going to say, it's caveat emptor, it's buyer beware, and it's always been this way in Australia in terms of making sure that the buyer does the research. Because if you think about it, if you're buying something worth $500,000 or $1 million, and then there's disputes in terms of what I did buy, what I didn't buy, it'll all be locked up in court. So it's really important to understand that the consumer needs to do their research.
I understand that, but I'm sorry, if you spend $1 million on a property, you'd expect it not to fall down.
True.
Within a few years.
Absolutely.
So doesn't the government need to take some responsibility here?
Yeah, so when we get into the apartments, it's certainly more challenging to buy an apartment. Your due diligence has to be a lot more than what it would be in buying your own home. The reason for that is you're not in control.
No.
You know, you're one of many, and in terms of that, you've got a body corporate that looks after you. So if you're buying
sometimes the body corporate doesn't look after you.
That's right. Well, you know, in some cases, the body corporate doesn't necessarily want the public to know that they've got issues around structure or issues around water. And that's our big challenge.
Because then it's difficult to sell your apartment.
Correct.
So, I mean, I've read a number of articles in the last few weeks advising people under no circumstances to buy an apartment off a plan or buy a new apartment because it's just too risky. Do you agree with that?
I do, Angela. In terms of, I've always agreed with this. I'm on record a lot of times in terms of saying it is challenging in buying a brand new apartment. That's not to say, because we've got to put this into perspective, we've got 2 million apartments. We've just, in the last decade, we've built around 690,000.
Very quickly.
Yes, and we've got 150,000 underway. So it is a challenge. So you've got to do your research.
But how do they get through the council when they go? Like, if you're building a house, your own house, they are so strict. How can they get away with it, building shoddy stuff?
Now we've got private certifiers, and those are the people who approve the buildings. Now, the challenge with that is, as you come back to Sarah about the government being in control of that, we've got real challenges there. So we need to make sure that those certifiers are looked after and also held account by the regulators. Because if they're not, we will get the odd few that are rushed and they're more profit than they are quality, and speed is the problem that we've got in terms of all of that.
What we seem to be seeing in a couple of the instances we're talking about is where an apartment block's gone up here, and that's what they're doing, particularly in New South Wales, are putting lots of high-rises together. So one goes up, it's all well and good. Then they start building one next door. They start digging in to do the car park. Bob's your uncle, and suddenly the cracks appear. What is the protection for you if you're in that apartment block and this one starts putting cracks in?
Look, we're seeing that with Mascot also with an underground rail line. It is super challenging, right? There's ultimately very little accountability at different levels. So if you're the developer, are you accountable? If you're the builder, are you accountable? What about the engineer? Are you accountable? What about the architect?
But hang on, the engineers don't have to be licensed or something.
The builders don't have to be licensed to build over 3 stories. Get that? You've got to be licensed to build a house, but over 3 stories you don't have to be licensed. Now, it's state by state, so this is where it also gets quite complex. You know, land title is a state and territory issue. It's not a federal issue. So we've got a mess and it needs to be cleaned up. And we are starting to see some movements in that area around. There's a forum happening in about 2 weeks' time, led by the federal minister, and we're going to see hopefully some changes in this area.
So I mean, it's been hard enough historically to get Australians to move into apartments in the first place. We all think we deserve a quarter-acre block. The government, of course, is telling people, town planners say, no, we need to get used to this as populations increase. We need to reduce sprawl. We need to be around transport hubs, etc., etc. So what if we are going to do what everyone keeps telling us to do and moving into apartments, how can we buy an apartment and be protected? Do we need to change the law, or what things should we look out for?
So the due diligence we must do. OK, are they reputable builders? how long have they been building and developing for? If they've just set up a new company, in other words, that's what sometimes they do. They set up a new company, and if all goes pear-shaped, they just basically liquidate.
That's right. It's called phoenixing, isn't it?
Yeah, and start another company.
So have a look at the length of the company. Have a look at the construction, the plans, the specs. Those things are critical.
How expensive is it to do that at every apartment you think of bidding on? That costs a fortune.
It does. So start with a pre-purchase building inspection. OK, so I know it's difficult for off the plan. That's when you've got to potentially engage an engineer to have a look over the plans.
And how can you tell if another building's going to be built next door? You know, you need a crystal ball.
Correct, and that's why the builder's warranties and the building insurance process is really important in terms of making sure that you have those insurances in place and the finances of the company and the developer are strong, because if something does go wrong, you need to point the finger and you need to sue them. And this is problematic, right? There is layers upon layers, and then also it's different in every state. It really is a mess, and we do need some leadership.
When you buy a new apartment, what's the deal? How many years have you got for structural damage?
So it's different in each state, but in New South Wales, as an example, it's 6 years. In Victoria, it's 7 years. In some states and territories, it's 5 years. So what could be a tip for those people looking to buy an apartment is maybe buy it when it's a decade old. A couple of good reasons for that, right? Because you can obviously see resales that have happened in that apartment, so you know whether it's worth what it's worth. You're not paying the developer profits. You're also understanding in regards to, you know, how well has it performed. You can have a look at the body corporate and the owners corporations reports, and you can start to see whether there are any issues inside the building. And also, door knock a neighbour. I would absolutely say to everyone, what's this apartment building like? Is it good to live here? Are there any water issues? Are there any structural issues? Those types of things.
It all falls off when you knock. It's probably a good bad time.
Exactly.
Do you know dodgy stuff's gone on? Do you think there's dodgy stuff going on?
Where there's large profits to be made, Ange, I do believe that you can put speed and profit before quality and safety. And so when the pendulum was 15 years ago, we were too slow. We just could not build enough, and that was pushing prices up because of the high demand, low supply. We've now gone the other way too far, where we've got these private certifiers. So if I go out and get a certifier, he comes in and says, there's 15 defects in this building, and, well, that's too many, and that one's really expensive. I'm going to go and get another certifier and see if they pick up the same defect. And if they don't, that person certifies it, cleared, there we go, certificate of occupancy, everyone move in.
So that system's got to change.
That system has to change. There's got to be more accountability in terms of the certification, or building surveyors in Victoria is what they're called. So there's a lot of work to be done in this area, because if we don't have it, there's going to be a crisis of confidence in the apartment space, and that means, look, it's our second biggest employer.
I sort of feel like, you know, you've got thousands of people. You've got thousands of people in Sydney who are currently without a home for God knows how long. I feel it's a little bit of victim blaming, saying, well, you should have done your research. I think someone needs to step in terms of the authorities and make sure that people can't get away with this anymore. It's just awful.
What is happening with that, with the people that had to move?
I think there's enough political pressure now on the government to actually step in and change laws. I think the thing that's shocked most people is that there are just no protections. I mean, I was stunned to find out that there was almost no recourse. That these
and you know what? It's taxpayers who end up footing the bill anyway, because these people who are homeless are now getting, I think, their grants of $400 a night for accommodation until something is done.
Well, it's 100%.
That's an extraordinary amount of money when you add it all up over a high-rise building.
It's always the taxpayer who's going to pay, because ultimately the profits are made to the companies, and then you've got this situation where, you know, there's the recourse and the suing that also gets done. Well, if they don't, the government step in, and we've got to pay for all of that as well.
Well, if people like you are saying out there, do not buy new apartments off the plan, that's going to make a difference. If people stop buying them, that'll make a difference too.
Yeah, agreed.
People power.
You know how there's a downturn in the economy? I think you just helped a little bit.
No, they can buy established apartments. That's always good. I live in an established apartment.
Just out of curiosity, if you are a dodgy developer, how much should you donate to your political party of choice in order to get building improvement?
Great one, Joe.
That was just Joe.
Joe, your Acme Constructions business, how's it coming along?
Very well, very well. We just got the green light. We're going all the way up, baby.
High Rise Bananas. You can hear more from Ben at thepropertycouch.com.au or wherever you get your podcasts from. Ben Kingsley, thank you for simplifying that for us. Thank you.
They're using chipboard instead of concrete.
Yeah, indeed. Hey, we are back in just a tick. You are watching Studio 10.